So we are going to start out with the video lesson number 30. In this particular video lesson, we are going to be talking about testing physical properties of minerals. So the first thing that we're going to talk about is, well, what are those physical properties that we're looking for? In this case, there's 4 of them that we're going to focus specifically on. And let's go ahead and jump to those notes and take a look at those real quick. So on page 125, that's what this goes along with, is on page 125. The student, that's you guys, should be able to test the physical properties, including hardness, color, luster, and streak. So notice that I've highlighted the 4 that you're responsible for. So the first thing we're going to start out with is Mohs scale of hardness. So how to test for hardness? Well, there's a couple of different ways to do this. The first thing that you can do is, if you have a Mohs scale of hardness, you're just going to look at that and find the number. So I do happen to have a Mohs scale of hardness here, and it's as easy as saying, well, a diamond is 10, and then calcite is going to be a 3, and then of course things are going to find their way into and in between those numbers. So for instance, your fingernail has a hardness of 2.5, copper pennies are 3.5. So what this scale really tells you is 2.5 is softer than 3.5, meaning if you were to rub your fingernail against a penny, your fingernail cannot scratch the penny. So it means your fingernail is softer. Okay, so that's one thing that we're going to talk about on how to test hardness. Now, another way, if you jump back to the notes real quick, you can test hardness by comparing each one of the minerals against each other. So for instance, let's say I have these 2 minerals and I want to see which one of these 2 is hardest. I have to scratch this one against that one, or I have to scratch this against that to figure out, well, this one is harder than this one. Okay, now that doesn't have anything to do with the Mohs scale of hardness, because we don't know the numbers. We can just tell this is a harder mineral than this example. Okay, another way that we can do that is take something that we have a known hardness. So for instance, if I had a nail or a penny or perhaps a paper clip, I can take my paper clip and scratch that against the mineral to see if it is scratched by an object of known hardness. So the next thing we're going to talk about is color. So the color is pretty obvious. All you do is just take your mineral sample and you lay it down, and you hopefully have some good quality light that you can use, and you just look at it. Oh, well, this one is kind of grayish dark, maybe even a little bit of black or green. This one here is red and white, kind of rust orange colored. All right, that's how you're going to test for color. You actually don't even have to touch the mineral samples to test for color. It's just a visible observation. Your next test is going to be for streak. Now, it sounds really strange, but sometimes you can take a mineral and you can turn it into a powder, and when you turn it into a powder, it's actually a different color than the visible color that you see. So what we want to do to turn it into a powder is to scratch it against one of these streak plates. Now we have a white streak plate here and a brown streak plate here. Things that you can do, you literally just take your sample and you make sure your streak plate is clean first, all right, and then you just rub it on there. So you can see a very light white powder gets rubbed onto there, and you can see that this streak of this particular mineral is going to be white. Okay, you can also test on the other streak plate. For instance, here's a white streak plate. I'm going to try to clean that off quickly with my fingers. I'm just going to take this mineral hill. Notice there's several different minerals inside of this one rock. I'm going to try to isolate the one on the tip here and scratch to see. Okay, so clearly this mineral is harder than our streak plate. So we'll take this sample here, do the same thing. All right, and you can see that this streak is white, probably a little bit easier seen on the brown streak plate. Oh, there we go. That was a good quality streak. So this particular mineral, when you scratch it onto the streak plate, it has a white powdery streak. Okay, so the last thing that we're going to test for is luster. When you test for luster, you want a bright light, not so bright that you can't see the actual mineral, but you do want it to be highly reflective. So I'm just going to use the light from my cell phone, and really all you do is you just take your sample and you look at it underneath the light. And I know that the light on the Elmo isn't that great, so you have to bear with me a little bit, but there's going to be high luster and low luster, and then you're also going to be able to see glassy luster and those kinds of things. So basically we're looking for the ability of this mineral to reflect light. So That's how you're going to test for luster. So there's 4 things that you're responsible for. I want to make sure that we're clear on this. The 4 things are hardness, color, streak, and luster. And then hopefully you remembered how to use the Mohs scale of hardness, which you just find the object on there, and then you can compare. As far as color goes, you're just going to take your different samples and you're going to make observations about those samples to see what is the color of your mineral. The next thing that you're going to do is test for streak using your streak plates, and then after testing for streak, you'll use a light to test for your different lusters, or basically how shiny how shiny your mineral is, how much it reflects light. So that's your lesson for today, video lesson number 30 on how to test physical properties of minerals.